Welcome back to another episode of the Brilliant Resilient Experience.
My dear friend, where have you been? Where have you gone? Where did you win? Someone there, are you listening? Is it too late? My dear friend.
If you find other people that have big goals and you won't feel as crazy, you'll be motivated. Today, we have a very special guest. We have an amateur mixed martial artist from Macomb, Michigan, and she trains at Macomb Martial Arts. So I'm really excited to have her on, and I'm excited to talk to her about her background and about women's MMA. So let's go ahead and bring on Shelby LaBonty. I feel like there's so much going on in women's MMA right now, and it's a weird time because we don't have like Ronda Rousey right now. We don't have a huge star in women's MMA, but I feel like we have so many that could just break through at any moment. So it's an exciting time in women's MMA for sure.
It is, and I'm even excited for Holly Holm versus Kayla Harrison. I think that's probably the biggest women's MMA topic right now, arguably.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm excited for that.
I am too. It's crazy because I never would have guessed that fight was going to happen. And I had a feeling that there was a possibility that Kayla would go to the UFC, but she had been in PFL for so long that I kind of gave up on that idea, I guess, in my head. But to see her go to the UFC is huge because if she could actually become champion, she would probably be, I don't know, she might be the greatest combat sports athlete of all time if she's able to pull that off. If you consider her other accolades.
Definitely. And that matchup, it's pretty much basic like grappler versus striker. I'm just unsure on if she's going to be able to make bantamweight because if you like look at her tapology, she's never been down to 135. So, oh man, I know how the weight cut is, and that's not going to be fun.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about that because you've been competing at atom weight, which is 105 for people who don't know. So 105 pounds. And they don't really have that. They have that division more in Asia than they do here, I feel like. But they do have it in some organizations. Like I think Invicta has the 105 division. But there's probably less opportunities there than there are at 115. Is that kind of why you're deciding to move up to 115?
Yeah, that's definitely a huge factor is getting more fights. It's really hard to find girls just at 105 in general and then to like accept. I've like my goal for in 2023 was to get my walking weight higher. I have accomplished that. And I still want to get bigger to fight at strawweight. But I figured while I'm amateur, I might as well fight at strawweight, see it, like feel it out. And then, if all goes well or I get bigger than pro, it'll be much easier to find fights.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, I just saw a clip yesterday of Laura Senko talking about that, how she was like, yeah, I would have fought longer if the UFC had a 105 division because I didn't, there just weren't any opportunities. So it makes sense. How is the weight cut? So, I mean, obviously you're going to be moving up, so you won't have to be cutting as much, but at the same time, you'll have to be putting on a little bit of weight to be able to like not have a huge disadvantage in the size compared to, I mean, I feel like some of these girls that are cutting to 105 or cutting to 115 and cutting to 125, some of them are pretty big. So, how, as a woman, like, I feel like weight cutting, I mean, just from my experience with trying to even lose a couple pounds, is like, it's hard. So how has your experience been with weight cutting?
Well, it's not fun.
Yeah.
It requires, a lot of discipline. I honestly think it's harder mentally than it is physically because, it's so easy to just like go through the drive-thru, get fast food, or, going out to eat with friends is fun. But when I'm on a strict diet and a strict weight cut, I have to sacrifice all of, the good time. And I love food, so it's really hard. But for the most part, I think, especially at 105, getting to like 110, which is what I fought my last fight, a catch weight, that wasn't too hard. But the last 5 or 4 pounds, that's where it gets really miserable. That's when you're cutting all the water, you're dehydrated, things like that. And I think for me right now, where my weight's at, strawweight, it'll be a breeze compared to atom weight for me at the moment until I get bigger.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I love food too, so that would be hard. I feel like that's got to be one of the hardest parts of fighting. Obviously, it's hard to get in there and get in a cage and fight somebody for 15 minutes, but it's also really hard to be disciplined in that sense. How do you stay disciplined with your diet? What are some tricks that you have?
So I kind of like just remove myself from the situations where there would be like food around. Like I kind of mentioned earlier, like let's say I get invited to go out, like, and it's to a restaurant or something, I'll just politely decline. And honestly, sleep. When I'm sleeping, I don't think about food. So if I can just sleep and not think about it, that helps, you know, like if I can sleep in, go to bed earlier, you know, that's really it. But other than that, it's just mental. Like I never want to be that person that misses weight. I think that should be embarrassing. So I'll never miss weight. That having that goal to reach to, it's different if you like don't fight and like you don't have to make weight, but when you make weight or when you have to like make a certain weight class, that's a huge motive, you know?
Yeah, that's what I've heard too. Like just knowing that you have like a date that you have to make the weight by, and knowing like the exact weight you have to be at. Like I've heard that kind of makes it easier, just because you know it's gonna be over with, like, you know, like you're gonna survive and you just have to make it, and then once you make it you're like, okay, we're good. So
yeah, and then after the fight, you know, you can eat whatever you want for you know, a certain amount of time. You might not feel the best, but you can splurge a little bit, you know, in between fights.
Yeah, I think everybody does that a little bit, even if they say they don't. I'm like, you probably do a little bit. You have a couple pieces of cake or a brownie or something. I'm like, don't lie to me.
You only live once, you know, like don't let it pass up.
That's awesome. So when did you start getting involved in martial arts? Do you have like a background in jiu-jitsu or wrestling, or how did you get started?
My background is actually karate. I started when I was 6. However, you know, I was 6. My parents are not martial artists. I know it's pretty different when you come from like a martial arts family. However, I'm the first. So growing up, you know, it was my parents that would have to take me to practice. They didn't always want to. So I was never like hardcore training at 6 years old, but it did get pretty intense when I was 13, 14. So I am a black belt in karate. That's kind of like my foundation. And then I started wrestling for my high school when I was 15. So I have 3 high school wrestling seasons under my belt.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, it all started with karate, and then it kind of just escalated from there. I was like getting more serious as I got older. You know, I was like, this is kind of what I want to do. This is my sport. So yeah, it got really intense when I was training at 14, and that's actually when I met the Cuppies, Corey and Connor Cuppy, at Macomb Martial Arts. So I've been with them since I was 14, which is like 8 years.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. I didn't realize you had been training there that long. Nice.
Yeah, it's been a while.
That's what I think is so cool now. And it's why I love talking to amateur fighters, because I feel like it just kind of gives you a glimpse of what the future of MMA is going to look like in the next 5 to 10 years. And that's why I talk to so many amateur fighters, and because I want to know, what are you guys doing now? Because I feel like if you're already, you know, you're a black belt in karate, you're already, you said you had 3 wrestling seasons under your belt. in high school wrestling, which there's not even a lot of women that have done high school wrestling in general. It's kind of a relatively new thing. Like we didn't have that when I was in high school. I sound like an old lady right now, but but yeah, like it wasn't a thing. So I feel like seeing that and hearing that, it's like there's a whole new generation of fighters now that have way more experience, not only in karate and, you know, the typical things that you get into when you're a kid, but also the wrestling. And then, you know, you said you started training. So did you actually start training like MMA like when you were a teenager, or when did you kind of transition into like that kind of training?
Yeah, so I would say I was about 14 when I started doing actual like MMA classes and roping it all
Wow.
together, because I already had the striking from karate,
Sure.
and then I wrestled, so I had a good wrestling base. And I did start jujitsu like maybe 6 months to a year prior to wrestling. So I knew a rear naked choke, I knew an armbar, I knew the fundamentals.
Yeah.
So then I was like, you know, I'm kind of well rounded right now. I might as well put it all together, keep training it. And I think honestly now I like MMA altogether the most. I like to
Yeah.
be able to strike when you're on the ground. I like to be able to take them down if I want, or if I want to stand. Um, so yeah, I have been training MMA since I was 14.
That's awesome. Yeah, you're on a great path. That
Thank
is
you. I
amazing.
appreciate it.
Yeah. Is that like your goal eventually, is to like get to the UFC or get to a big promotion in the future? Is that kind of where you're headed?
Definitely. That is
Nice.
the dream or the goal, actually. You know, I know it's very possible.
Yeah.
A lot of people think it's like, you know, the chances are slim, but I hate to say this, but the girls division, you know, it's not as deep as the males, so I think we even have a better chance. And I
Yes.
know like a lot of people know me for my work ethic too. So like if I want it, I'm going to do everything that I can to make it happen. So I'm very excited for that, and that is another reason bumping up to strawweight might, you know, that would help. Because
Yeah.
UFC's talked about potentially adding atom weight, but I have not heard anything since, so I gotta put on some more weight.
Yeah, I don't know if they will. I mean, I'm sure they will eventually at some point. I just don't know how soon that will be, just because they really only have like three strong divisions right now. They have strawweight, flyweight, and then bantamweight. And I mean, they don't even really have 145 anymore. So I feel like probably what they'll do is try to get more of a filled out roster in those divisions, and then maybe they'll add like the 145 division back, and then maybe they'll add 105. That would be awesome. Once it gets to the point where women's MMA is evolved to that level, I think then we'll see more weight classes start to pop up, hopefully. Because that would be great. Because even like I look at some of these fighters at 135, and I'm like, they should be fighting at 145. Like they should not be cutting this much weight.
No, I
So
agree 100%.
I hope there's more divisions in the near future in women's MMA. But that's awesome that you are kind of making those moves now to prepare yourself, kind of getting out of your comfort zone a little bit and moving up a weight class. You know, you're going to be fighting girls that are bigger, but at the same time, there's going to be more opportunities for you. So hopefully that means you can get better matchups and just, yeah, better opportunities in general. So that way you can get to work on getting to the UFC. That's awesome.
Yeah, and in the past, I don't know if you saw it on my Tapology, but I do have one fight at strawweight. It was my debut. I
Nice.
walked at 112, so
Oh, wow.
I lost a unanimous decision. Um, it was not a very fun fight for me. I'll say that. But yeah, after I lost that fight, COVID hit. So then, you know,
Oh,
I
man.
lost, and then we were out for like 2 years. And, you know, that 2 years gave me like a lot of time to like reflect and kind of think about my MMA career. And I was actually thinking about not continuing it actually.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, so, but then I realized, I was like, I only weighed 112. I fought at strawweight. So I was like, okay, let's give it a go at 105. And then I finally got my first win, made me 1-1. And I was like, that was a huge difference feeling a strawweight who was actually a strawweight, walked much higher than I did. And then going down to Adam, it was a significant difference in like strength and whatnot.
Do you notice that more in the grappling than you do in the striking?
Yes, that's huge.
That's what I figured.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like striking, it does make a difference, especially like with power, but I feel like the grappling is where you really see a difference. Like we saw it this weekend with Fior in Blanchfield. Blanchfield, to me, is a better grappler than Fior. But
Agreed.
Fior is huge. She's gigantic. Like, that is crazy that she looked like she had a rough weight cut, but it's crazy to me that she's even able to make 125. She's so big. So I feel like that is like part of why she wins a lot of fights that, a lot of people don't think she's going to win. I mean, I kind of saw it and I was like, well, she's really big. She's tall. She actually has good wrestling, like good enough wrestling to where I don't think Blanchfield's going to be able to do much to her in the grappling. I'm like, but if they were both the same size, then I would probably go with Blanchfield. But just because of the size difference in her Muay Thai background, I was like, yeah, this is just not a good matchup for Blanchfield because Blanchfield's really not that big for the division.
Yeah, and Manon, I think I said her name right.
I know, I always say it wrong.
Yeah, or Fior, we'll say Fior. Her
Yeah.
takedown defense, was really good. So,
Yes.
Aaron couldn't even take her down. Aaron actually got taken down. I did think that guillotine was tight, though. I think it was an arm-in guillotine. So I think if Aaron would have got that, that would have been so hype. That would have been awesome. But I like Fior a lot. I love her striking style. It actually reminds me of myself a little bit with like the side kicks and stuff.
Yeah.
And then you get that from like Karate Hottie too. So that's like the karate I see in me. So I love that. And yes,
I think Fior, she's a karate black belt, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, like with the striking, when you are going against someone bigger and striking, they might have a reach advantage, but I think their weakness is their speed. I think if you're going against someone much smaller, like let's say just like an atomweight versus a strawweight and just striking, I would give the atomweight the speed advantage pretty much every time.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I've actually heard other people say the same thing. Like they are deciding between fighting up a weight class or down a weight class. And they're like, well, if I go up a weight class, yeah, I'll be smaller, but I'll have a big speed advantage. And I feel like that was what kind of worked for Kelvin Gastelum a lot of times when he was fighting at 185 because, yeah, he was not as big. Like, you look at him compared to somebody like Joe Pyfer and you're like, oh my God, they're not even in the same weight class. But Gastelum was so fast with his hands, and like as long as he didn't get taken down or like really get into too much trouble, like he could win any fight in that division. I mean, he almost beat Adesanya. So it's like, yeah, you see that sometimes with the smaller guys, or even like Volkanovski at lightweight. Like that's why I really love watching fighters move up in weight sometimes, because yeah, it's interesting. Do you feel like that is one thing that kind of will show in your game when you move up to strawweight, is that you might have a little bit of a speed advantage in the striking?
I do think so. A lot of people do say that I'm really fast. I don't really see it myself, but people tell me it all the time. So I'm like, okay, that must be true. But I think, as I get bigger, I might slow down a little bit, but
Yeah.
not much. And yeah, definitely like if you can just stay on the outside, get your movement, circle, and have good takedown defense, then yeah, the smaller fighter or the quicker fighter, that's huge. But if they get taken down and you're smaller, then it's really hard to get back to your feet, especially when you're taking damage and whatnot from down there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, do you feel like in local MMA, or I guess in the amateur scene, do you feel like in the women's divisions, because like I'm thinking about our scene here, I feel like we have a lot more kickboxers and we have a lot more like jiu-jitsu competitors, but we don't have a ton of actual MMA fighters. Do you feel like there are more grappling heavy MMA fighters in your community, or do you feel like there are more strikers that you've kind of run into since you've been on the amateur scene?
Wow, that's actually a really good question, Bree. I have not even thought about that. But if I look back to the girls that I fought, the last girl I fought at catchweight 110, she was a taekwondo black belt, so she was a
Okay.
striker. Um, and then when I fought Rebecca Rotenberry, she was really well-rounded. I know right after we fought, she got her purple belt in jiu-jitsu, and her striking was good. And then, man, yeah, that's a really tough question. I think it's
I'm
kind of all
curious,
over the
yeah.
place. And I think
Yeah,
if
because
you,
there's just not a lot of fighters too, so it's hard to like really figure out what's the secret sauce.
well, the secret sauce, according to like that UFC statistic, is like if you have a wrestling base, I think it was like you're more likely to dominate in MMA. Do you know what I'm
Yeah.
talking about? That statistic?
Yeah, I can't remember the exact number it was, but I know exactly what you're talking about. And that's always kind of what has been the narrative, I guess, is that wrestling is the best base for MMA, and really it's hard to argue still. I mean, I think there are cases to be made for like if somebody has a base in boxing or kickboxing or something else, if they have a really strong ability and strong skill set in that area, and depending on who they're matched up with too, I think that plays a huge factor in it. Because if you're a wrestler and you get matched up with a bunch of strikers, well, yeah, then your takedown accuracy is probably going to be a lot higher than it would be against other grapplers. So there's so many factors that play into it, but at the end of the day, if you look at history, yeah, wrestling has shown to probably be the best base for MMA
Yeah,
so far.
definitely.
It's interesting. Yeah, and now we're finally starting to see like more women with wrestling backgrounds, which is awesome. And I've noticed that like more schools have wrestling programs now in high schools, and I feel like that's going to be huge because that's kind of always been what was missing from women's MMA. I feel like was just there's tons of jiu-jitsu specialists, tons of kickboxers, tons of Muay Thai specialists, but there haven't really been not like a Matt Hughes type wrestler in women's MMA. Like we had Ronda Rousey, she was more like judo, I guess you could say, than wrestling, but like a real like American wrestler like in women's MMA, like that would just be so awesome. So I can't wait for it.
Yeah, I was actually the only girl on my wrestling team, and I
Really?
remember like I went to my high school wrestling coach before he was even my coach, and I was like, am I allowed to wrestle? Because like I knew it was co-ed, right? Like
Yeah.
co-ed, but no girls just ever did it for whatever reason. But yeah, so I went and asked him, and he was like, absolutely, like come on in. And so yeah, I was the only girl on my wrestling team all 3 seasons. And my senior year, this was in 2019, was the first year Michigan had the first ever women's state tournament.
Oh wow.
So I won that. That was
Nice.
awesome. Um, and yeah, ever since then, I just feel like it's been growing and growing and growing because I went the year after I graduate just to look at the tournament and watch, and it was way bigger than the previous year. And I was like, wow, like I
That's
feel like that
awesome.
helps, because it gives the girls something to work towards instead of just wrestling guys all the time. Like that would get
Yeah.
so discouraging. Like I remember there were times where I would get pinned in like a minute just going against like this guy, and I would just like start bawling my eyes out because I'm just like, this isn't fair. It's
Yeah.
frustrating.
Yeah, I could imagine that'd be frustrating. Yeah, well, so I'm so curious about all of this now. So when you got into wrestling, first of all, what did like your parents think? What did your friends think? Like, were they like, what are you doing? Or were they like, this is awesome?
I've always been a tomboy, so
Same.
a lot of my friends were guys. So I was
Nice.
nervous though. Like I've never started a sport and was like nervous, but me being the only girl at like my first ever wrestling practice, like I knew how to shoot a double leg, but I did not know the fundamentals of like folk style wrestling. So
Yeah.
I was super nervous that like the boys on my team wouldn't accept me. They wouldn't want me to be there, but they were so welcoming and like they became my brothers so fast and like they were so supportive. For my parents, I know my dad was like, hell yeah, like let's do it. My mom is always like, she's very anxious and like the combat sports, like she's not a big fan of, but she loves wrestling and she loved
Nice.
going to all the tournaments, like even watching my teammates. Because I was on a good team too. I wasn't just like I was on. We were the second. First year I started, we were seeded the second best team in the state. We ended up losing in the finals to one team, but we went like 27-1 the entire season as a team. And my mom loved wrestling. That's her favorite to watch out of any combat sport that I do.
That's
And
awesome.
Corey and Connor Cuppy actually encouraged me to wrestle. They were like, yeah, like you're gonna be a UFC star, or not UFC star, but like an MMA star. So like you might as well start now.
That's awesome. Well, that's cool. How did your mom feel when you decided to do MMA? Was she like, "What?"
She absolutely hates it still to this day. Like if I bring up, like I even have a jujitsu match coming up, like a super fight, a 10-minute submission only, and she's just like she doesn't know what jujitsu is, but she knows wrestling, she knows karate, but like she hates it all, especially my fights. One of those moms.
That's funny. I feel like there's no in between. It's either the mom is front row, like scream, like cheering, and then there's also the mom in the back having anxiety. Like there's only like there's two options. There's no in between. Like I've seen so many fighter moms since going to local shows, and it's just hilarious to like see the difference. And you can and it's funny because usually the fighters that are really good, their parents are like they hate it. It's funny.
Yeah, either their parents hate it or they're like a beast themselves, you know?
Yeah. Exactly.
Like Mackenzie Dern's dad is like her
Yeah.
coach and stuff like that. So, yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, well, tell me a little bit about your community. So obviously, I had Corey on a long time ago, back when I first started this thing, and he had told me a little bit about what you guys have going on there, which I think is really awesome. And obviously, Corey's great. I mean, he's fought in some of the biggest stages in MMA, so it's really got to be awesome to have him. And he's got a karate background too. So, I mean, what do you see going on in, in your part of town? You're in Macomb, Michigan, which is right outside of Detroit, right?
Yeah, right outside of
Nice.
Detroit.
Nice. So what do you guys have going on there in your local scene?
Honestly, we're just always in the gym, like grinding and trying to get better. One of my teammates, Tyler Grimsley, I don't know if you're familiar with the name.
Yeah.
He just won his fight. I don't know if it was a week or 2 weeks ago against like a UFC vet, makes him
Oh,
8-0.
nice.
So I think Tyler is so close to the UFC. If his next fight is not in the UFC, then I don't know what Dana is on. Honestly, like he needs to sign this man. But I know that once Tyler goes into the UFC. I think that's going to be huge for just Macomb Martial Arts and Macomb, Michigan in general.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for that. I'm super excited for Tyler. I know it's his time. So yeah, we're just constantly like, right now I'm focusing on jiu-jitsu because of my submission only match, and Corey's like our head striking coach, and I love the karate base because, I understand it all and I agree with it because, that's my background. So
Right.
yeah, I mean, there's not too much going on really. We just train and work and do what we got to do.
Awesome. Yeah, I feel like I can't remember exactly what we talked about the last time, but I know he told me about Tyler. He told me about his brother Connor too. But you guys don't have anyone in the UFC there yet, do you? So that would be
Not
that
yet.
would be the first.
Yeah, Tyler will be the first. I can confidently say that. I've never met a harder worker in my life than him. Once you guys see him fight in the UFC, you'll know what I'm talking about.
What division does he fight in?
155.
Oh, okay. So yeah, because you said 8-0, and I'm like, yeah, he must be knocking on the door. But at lightweight, it can be a little bit harder. But I don't know. They signed Tom Nolan, and Tom Nolan was like 5-0 or 4-0 or something.
Right.
So-
That's why we're like, I know it's funny.
You're like, yeah, exactly. That's funny. Yeah, well, that's awesome, and it's really cool because like I kind of feel like St. Louis is a similar kind of community to yours. So even though we're not in the same community, I feel like we have a lot of the same struggles and a lot of the same just like things that we deal with here. But we actually have a few guys in the UFC though, so that's actually really cool. But we only have one that still trains here full time. So all the other guys, like, they move to the bigger gyms, which like nothing wrong with that at all. Of course, like we only can do so much here, but it is cool to see, like, we have Sean Woodson, and Sean Woodson still trains and lives in St. Louis. So we're hoping that and he's going to be fighting in May in St. Louis in the UFC. So that's going to be insane.
Don't you have Miranda the Maverick? Or
Yes.
is that
Miranda,
okay.
she is from, I can't remember what the name of the town is, but it's like way far away from St. Louis. So like, I hope we can still claim her because I love Miranda Maverick. I don't know if she considers herself from St. Louis, but we'll go ahead and claim her because she's awesome. But yeah, and we have, funny enough, we have Joaquin Buckley, who just won over the weekend, and he actually, I think he trains in Michigan at Murcielago. So
Mercy does have some good fighters, and they have created a few UFC fighters as well. They're not
Yes.
like at the top yet, but they do have a good team.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's interesting because I know, I can't remember exactly when Joaquin started training up there, but it was like, I feel like within the past few years that he made that shift. And then one of our guys at my gym, Max Choriev, he moved out there too and started training there, and he's trying to get into the UFC. So he trains with Joaquin a lot. So they have like, their whole thing going on there. But it's really cool though, because Joaquin is still really like very supportive of St. Louis and still makes sure to like he even called out St. Louis over the weekend because we have the show coming up in May. He's like, I want on this card. So hopefully they can make that happen. That would be awesome.
I did see Miranda's Instagram post too. She said she wanted on the card as well, and she did call it like her
did she really?
hometown. Yeah. So
I'm gonna have to go look. I didn't see that. That's awesome.
It was after, I know she fought recently, like
Yes.
a month or two ago, something like that. And I was stalking her Instagram, and she did say, she's like, I want on this card. This is where I'm from. So you do got her.
Oh, that would be insane. That would be so cool, because not only to have like a St. Louis fighter or Missouri fighter on the card, but also to have a female St. Louis fighter, like that would be That would be awesome. I'm glad she's claiming St. Louis. That makes me happy.
Yeah, I did see that post, so that's cool.
That's awesome. Because I feel like some people, they either claim Kansas City or they claim St. Louis if they're like not in either city. So I'm glad she picked us instead of Kansas City. That's nice.
So I'm going to assume that you're going to that UFC card. Yeah?
Yes.
How many have you been to, like, in person?
None.
Oh my God, it's so, like, the energy and just like hearing Bruce Buffer live.
I know.
It's such a surreal feeling. It's amazing. You're gonna have so much fun.
I can't wait. Well, I'm actually going, let's see, it's less than 2 weeks now. I'm going to 300. So that's gonna be insane.
I was when did Volk fight? When he won last. It was UFC.
Yair?
No, yeah, it was July in Vegas. Yes, and then Brandon Moreno lost to...
Was that Noche? Or am I thinking of
unsure.
something else?
There's so many fighters. Sometimes I just like can't think of their names.
I know.
Gosh, it was one of the best cards though. Yeah, Volk was the main event. Brandon Moreno and the champ now isn't his name. No, his name's not Brandon, is it? Yeah, Pantoja, right?
Pantoja, Alex Pantoja, yeah.
Yes. So they fought. They were the co-main. I was in Vegas. That was on my birthday too. That was amazing.
Oh wow, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm so excited. I didn't think my first event would be 300, but I'm like, hey, I'll take it.
Go big or go home.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I'm so hyped. I get to watch Kayla Harrison versus Holly Holm. Like, that's crazy. I mean, well, I don't know how much of it I'll actually get to watch, like, in the arena, because I'll be doing press. So I don't know how that all works, because I haven't done a UFC event before, but I assume if I'm not watching it, I'll be talking to the fighters, which is honestly kind of cool. Like, cooler.
That's awesome.
Like, I can always go back and watch the fights later. So, yeah, I'm really excited because there's just so many legends on that card. Like, I look at it every day because I'm still doing a bunch of research for the event, and I look at the card every day, and I just am still amazed with how many legends are on there. It's insane.
It's going to be
crazy.
something special.
Yeah, for real. And even though Holly Holm versus Kayla Harrison isn't a title fight or anything, it just kind of feels like a title fight just because it's I feel like people forget that Holly Holm is in the Boxing Hall of Fame. Like, people forget. And Kayla Harrison is an absolute monster when it comes to really anything on the ground, but especially her judo. And just, if you look at both of their resumes, it's kind of insane that they're fighting each other. Like, this is, people are not hyping this fight up enough, I feel like.
It's just us girls, you know. No, I'm just kidding. But, man, what's your prediction for that fight?
I don't know. I was just digging into the stats yesterday trying to kind of figure it out. And I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea. It's so hard to predict because they're both at such different points in their career. And Kayla is so much younger. But at the same time, Holly, she hasn't looked bad. Even as she gets older, like, she's had a couple losses and whatever. But for the most part, she's looked pretty good. And she's still putting on good performances. So I don't know. I have no idea. I just don't know how fast is Kayla going to be able to get her to the ground? How is the weight cut going to affect her? And then with Holly, it's like, you know, is Holly going to be able to keep it on the feet? If she can, then I think Holly wins. But if Kayla gets her to the ground, then she might be in trouble. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't know either.
That's crazy.
We're just gonna have to see.
Because it's a very similar story to the Ronda Rousey fight. So, Holly shocked the world with that one. So,
beautiful
performance. Can't doubt her ever. You can't. So, I don't know. But just seeing her fight is amazing. Whether she wins or loses, I love watching Holly fight because I'm just like, this is so amazing.
I love her striking. Her striking is so
So
entertaining, and like I think she's a very entertaining fighter, you know, and
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to be biased because I'm a girl, but yes, there have been some boring girl fights
Yeah.
lately. I will say that, but there have also been some bangers, and like
Yeah.
they're great. And girls are just so flexible. Like we get in
Yes.
weird positions, especially in jujitsu. So it's like it's interesting, you know, and especially because like we train and we know what to look for. I feel like maybe a lot of the males that kind of rip on women's MMA, they're probably the ones that don't even train. So it's like, why
Yeah.
does your opinion matter?
It's always the ones that don't train because a lot of the ones that train have trained with women before and they know how flexible we are and they know that like I was talking to a fighter, like a local fighter not too long ago, and we were talking about one of the female kickboxers, and she does some jujitsu too, I think. And he's like, no, he's like, I don't want to spar with her. He's like, she hits too hard.
Bro, people always say that at my gym. They're like if a new person walks into the room, like I'm the smallest one, right? I'm like
Yeah.
always the smallest. I'm the smallest person, and I'm a girl, like wherever I go. And they'll have to warn people about me. They're like, she might be small, but since she's small, she feels entitled to hit everybody as hard as she can. I'm like, no, like, no, I gotta do what I gotta do, you know? Like, I am a 105 pounder, so, or
Yeah.
115, whatever.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I feel like people sleep on women's combat sports so much, but like I went to the kickboxing fights this weekend here, and both of the women's fights were like the best fights on the card. I mean, one of them I thought was fight of the night, and a lot of people agree with me. Even the guys, so like they were like, yeah, that was insane.
Yeah.
And I feel like too, people criticize women's MMA because a lot of the fights go to decision and stuff. I'm like, yeah, it's because we're harder to knock out. Okay.
100%. Yeah,
Exactly.
definitely.
Yeah. That's hilarious. I know. I love getting on people about that kind of stuff because I'm like, no. And people are sometimes surprised because I cover so much of men's MMA, but I actually, what really got me into it was was watching Rose. And I've talked about this so many times, but like that was literally why I got into MMA as hardcore as I did, because before that I was just like a casual fan. Like I would watch the Conor McGregor fights and like I didn't know anything. Like I knew like the top name fighters, but I didn't really like follow it like I do now. And it was whenever I started watching Rose, and then I went back and I watched all the old Ultimate Fighter seasons of all the women's fights, and I went and watched Invicta fights. I went and watched everything. Like that's why I already knew that Laura Senko had fought before and all this stuff. Like whenever Jamie Varner came out and like made his whole like comment or whatever, I was like in my head, like I already knew, I had already seen her fight. Like, cause I went back and watched like all the old women's fights. And, so it's funny cause yeah, I'm like, I wish women's MMA was bigger because I would like to cover more of it because that's what I enjoy the most. And, yeah, it just needs time, I think, to evolve. I think that's really all it is.
Yeah, exactly. I think, you know, in the future, it's not going to stop growing. It's just going to get
Right.
bigger and bigger and bigger. I don't think it's going to go backwards or it's going to peak. I think it's just going to continue to
I do
just
too.
constantly go up, and that's great.
Yeah.
And I'm super excited for it.
Yeah, we just need a star in women's MMA or a couple stars, and then I think it will turn around. Because when we had Ronda, it was, I mean, that was, I think her fight with Amanda Nunes was one of the highest grossing pay-per-views of all time. So, I mean, people who think women's MMA can't sell a pay-per-view are out of their mind. Because I guarantee you, if Rose becomes double champ, she will be able to headline a pay-per-view for sure.
Yeah, I was
easily.
gonna say Rose, I think, is a star in my head. Like she has like over 1 million followers on Instagram. She's very well known.
Yes.
So she's definitely a star and I absolutely love her too. I think she is my favorite female fighter in the UFC.
Same. Yeah. And I never have favorites because there's so many fighters, but like just the impact that Rose has had on me, I feel like that makes it like, you know, even when I train, like I take a lot of influence like from her style, like her footwork and her striking and, you know, like I love watching her fight. I love watching her train. Like she's just great. She's so good.
She's so well rounded.
Yes.
It's beautiful. Like watching her technique, it's really like it shows the art in martial arts and I love that.
Same. Yeah, I feel like that is one difference too with a lot of the women's fights is yeah, it's more of a showing of their martial arts skill set because yeah, you don't see the same kind of knockouts. You don't see as many finishes in women's MMA as you do in men's, but at the same time, sometimes you see more technical fights because of that. And you see better cardio. You see just better, like, it's more competitive. It's more fun to watch because, you know, they really have to fight for it and they have to dig deep to get those wins sometimes. And like, I don't know, I feel like every time there's a women's fight that goes like all 5 rounds, not every time, but a lot of times, there's always like one moment in the fight where somebody almost gets a finish or somebody almost wins the fight. And so it's like, it's a different experience than watching somebody just get knocked out. But I don't know, I think when you train and when you hang around a lot of like local fighters, I feel like the knockouts get less and less exciting. And almost you just more like feel bad like for their opponent. Like I don't know if it's just me, but like I haven't been able to enjoy watching knockouts as much as I used to just because like I know how bad that sucks. Like not even just the concussion aspect but also just mentally like what that does to a fighter is just like I can't even enjoy it, you know, unless it's like somebody that is like a friend or a teammate knocks somebody out, then, you know, then I'll be like, oh, yeah.
Like I personally have never been knocked out. But like, yeah, I couldn't imagine coming back from that, you know, like that's gotta be so hard. Like you have to probably take at least 6 months off if you're like, you know, knocked out cold.
Right.
And then, oh my gosh, did you see that it was an Instagram reel of the UFC ref? He was like, I don't know what was worse, that punch or your head hitting the canvas. And he said that to the fighter that got knocked out. It was like, what are you doing? Why would you say that to him? I just seen a lot of people like laughing
I know what you're
about
talking
that. And
about.
it's like, it's kind of funny, but it's like not at the same time, you know?
Yeah. It's
like,
brutal. This sport is brutal.
and
Is.
it's our careers too. Like, you know, we put our bodies on the line, you know?
Yes, 100%. Yeah, and of course, you know, it's okay to criticize performances and it's okay to, you know, have an opinion, but some people just take it to a whole nother level. And I'm like, but you've never even been punched in the face before. So like, how can you sit here?
They always have the most to say, right?
Yeah. It's hilarious. But getting back to Rose, so I'm curious what your thoughts are because I've been trying to figure this out in my head of like what is going to happen at women's flyweight because there are so many moving parts. We have the Ultimate Fighter, so Shevchenko and Grasso are, I guess they're filming that right now. They just started filming. So I imagine that will be the next title fight. And then we've got Rose. She's coming off a win. We've got Macy Barber coming off a win. And now we've got Fior coming off a win. So we have this like weird triangle situation going on. I mean, I think if you were to ask me who deserves the next shot, I would say Fior, but I don't know. It's a weird situation.
Well, I was surprised that Fior was ranked third. I thought she was ranked one, but no, I guess it would be Shevchenko and Grasso and then Fior, right?
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay. And then Macy Barber and Caitlin, that fight that they just had, that one was boring, honestly. I bet Rose beats both of them.
I think so too.
Yeah, and then
And I really like Macy, but I think Rose could probably beat her.
yeah.
Just because of the way that Macy fights, I don't think that you can fight like that against Rose. I mean, Hebos tried to do it, and Hebos, I don't know, she might even have a little bit better striking than Barber. So I do think Barber probably has better wrestling than Hebos, but Hebos has just a better ground game overall, in my opinion. So
And
it's kind of
then
weird.
Fior already fought Rose. Like, that was Rose's
Right.
first fight at that weight class, right? That's a tough
That's
one.
crazy.
So kudos to Rose for that. That takes a lot of, that's just bravery right there. Like, that's
I
great
think
for
that's
her.
the worst matchup for anybody in that division, honestly, besides Shevchenko, is Fior.
Shevchenko versus Fior would be interesting.
That's the fight I want to see.
Yeah, me too. That would be great.
Yeah.
And then Grasso surprised me a lot when
Yes.
she beat Shevchenko. Like, when I saw that finish, I was like, that was brilliant. That was genius. That was like the best game plan you could have ever had going against Shevchenko.
Yeah,
Like,
because there's
wow.
so few ways to win against Shevchenko, and she figured out a way. And yeah,
Not
that was
only
insane.
did they like have the game plan, but like she executed it, and that's
Yes.
so hard, you know? Like, it's so
Yeah.
much easier said than done, but she did it.
Yeah, that's one huge thing. Like, if you see a fighter that can follow a game plan, like, you pretty much already know, like, if they're not in the UFC yet, you're like, oh, they're going to be in the UFC, just because, like, that ability is huge. Like, just to be able to follow a game plan and it actually work is insane. Just because, like I said, there's so many ways to lose, and there's so, sometimes depending on the matchup, like, there's not a lot of ways to win. So if you can figure out a way to win and execute it, I mean, yeah, you're golden.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I'm looking at the flyweight rankings right now, and yeah, so Fior just moved up to number 2. So it's Grasso's champ, and then Shevchenko's number 1 contender, and then there's Fior. And then Blanchfield is still ranked number 3. I guess she was ranked number 2 before, so I guess that's what happened. So
Yeah.
Fior was ranked number 3, Blanchfield was ranked number 2, and then they just kind of flip-flopped after that fight. And then Barber is ranked number 4. Andrade is still ranked number 5. And then Rose is number 6. So I feel like that little group is probably like whoever is going to fight for the title next after Shevchenko is probably one of those names, I would think. It's just going to depend on how things play out, because I think if nothing else really happens in the division, I would think Fior would be next. But let's say Rose and Barber end up fighting, that changes things, in my opinion. If one of them gets a really good performance.
Yeah, and I didn't know that Rose just got ranked because I didn't think she was ranked before the Amanda fight.
I don't think she was.
So wow, she just moved up to 6. She
Yeah.
didn't. No, Rose lost to Andrade, right, with the Kimura Slam, or was that someone else?
I think she's fought Andrade at least twice. I know she's beat her once. Her most recent fight against, I'm gonna look this up right now. But her most recent fight against Andrade, I think it was during COVID. That was when she was training with Whitman. She had Whitman in her corner for that fight.
Okay.
And that was, let me see. Yeah, that was the rematch. So UFC 251, that was a split decision, but I thought it was a pretty clear win for Rose. But yeah, so they have fought twice and they're 1-1. So
That'll probably be a fight then, I would think.
at some point, I would think they would do a trilogy. If I don't know, but it's going to depend on what happens with another great women's fight. Oh my God, I forgot about this one on UFC 300. Marina Rodriguez versus Andrade. That's happening.
Are they
very
fighting?
soon. Yeah. That's a bad matchup for Andrade though. Like normally I'd probably pick Andrade, but Marina Rodriguez, her Muay Thai is insane.
Yes, she does have
so
good
good.
striking. Oh man.
Yeah, I don't
feel
know.
Like, I kind of feel like, how old is Andrade? I feel like she's been around for a long time and she might be like working her way out.
She's 32.
Oh, so.
But she has 37 professional MMA fights.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
Well-
because she's from Brazil, so she probably started off with like a jungle fight or something like that. Or no, actually she didn't. She started off in like a bunch of different promotions. She fought in like 8 different promotions.
That's crazy.
That's funny.
It's like, it's crazy because in different countries, like you can start doing like full contact MMA at like 14, 15 years old. Like that's how Raul, made his UFC debut at like 18. I was like, I couldn't even fight my amateur debut until I was 18. So I'm like, that's kind of not fair, but I mean, at the same time, we could always move to Brazil and fight if we wanted to, but it's just like, dang, that's kind of hard.
Yeah, seriously, because she she started fighting in 2011. So that's what, 13 years ago? So she was, I guess, 19? Yeah.
Yeah.
So still pretty young.
Okay.
I don't know if she did any amateur fights or anything that's like off the record. I don't know. But yeah, that's crazy. That's a long fight career for a female fighter. And I'm trying to see when she got in the UFC. Yeah, she got in the UFC in 2013. So
In 2013?
yeah.
Wow. So it took her 2 years.
Yeah.
Animal.
Yeah. It's crazy. That's one thing I've noticed about like a lot of the Brazilian fighters is like they do not care. Like they will fight 100 times a year and they will do a bunch of jiu-jitsu competitions. I mean, they're just savages. It's always fun to watch Brazilian fighters, especially women's, because I feel like they have more women's fighters in Brazil, probably because of jiu-jitsu, I would think.
Yeah. Jiu-jitsu is obviously huge there. So, and I know that Brazil, not to like rip on it, but it's not like the safest place. So maybe a lot of females are just doing it for like self-defense. And then it just turns into like, hey, I want to fight in the cage.
Yeah.
So
I feel like the best fighters come out of like the most dangerous places.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. Like, I mean, I watched that documentary on Jose Aldo. And even like Ronaldo, if you're familiar, he has his own gym in Novi now. That was Jose's jiu-jitsu coach back in Brazil, but now he has his own Atos gym like an hour from my house. He was on The Ultimate Fighter. I forget which season, but he just would talk about how like rough it was back there, and so they would just like all train, and it's awesome. Like that's all they had is, like the gym.
Yeah, well, like look at Poatan. That's what he said. That's what saved him from alcoholism was fighting. Like he used MMA as a way to create discipline in his life, and it turned out to be now he's double champion, which is insane. It's such a great story.
That is a good
I feel like a
story.
lot of people are like that too. Like there's a lot of people that train that like they'll probably never fight or they'll probably never like do it on like a pro level, but they train because it keeps them disciplined and it keeps them out of other things.
Yeah, and it's like our therapy.
It's seriously, it is. Like I haven't really been to the gym because it's funny. I had the stupidest injury happen. It has nothing to do with training, but I was playing with my dog and she was doing zoomies and she slammed into my head like really hard. And I woke up the next day and I couldn't move my neck for like 2 days.
Oh my gosh,
Um,
it always happens not at practice when you get injured. I swear it's always something so stupid like outside of it.
yeah.
But you have a big dog too?
Yeah, she's half Doberman, half pit bull. So
Oh my God, I could talk about dogs forever. Don't get me started. But I have
she's the
two.
best. I wasn't even mad at her afterwards because she's so cute.
Yeah, I have two. I have an Aussie Border Collie mix, and then I have a Beagle mix. Her name's Judo.
Aw.
Sorry if you hear them in the background. They're
Oh no, you're
young,
good.
so
That's awesome. Yeah, dogs are my favorite. I like dogs better than people usually.
me too. Me too. They actually wrestle. I'm so glad we got two dogs because so the oldest one, his name's Oogie. We call him the guard player because like he is like the submissive one and will always go to his back. Or since he's like an Australian Shepherd, he's like ankle picking because he bites the legs to like
That's
hurt her.
hilarious.
So and then Judo, the little beagle, she's so good when Oogie pulls guard and she's like she'll go to like north south or she'll go like knee on belly and she like hops sides and like me and my husband are just like roughing them in the background like their jiu-jitsu or wrestling match and it's so cute. I just love it.
That's awesome. Dogs are the best. I love wrestling with my dog too. Like
Yeah.
she loves to play and she doesn't have another dog to play with, so I just play with her and which is why I get slammed in the head because you know,
Yeah.
that's what happens. I get abused because she doesn't have another dog to take her frustration out on. But she's funny. Like this morning she did her zoomies again and I was like, I better stay out of the way because I'm not trying to get body slammed.
That's so funny. Oh my gosh, I love them.
Yeah, dogs are great. They are the best. I feel like, yeah, it's so funny too because when I got my dog, I didn't know how big she was gonna be, and I didn't know what kind of dog she was until I got her DNA tested. And when I got her, I was like, "Do you guys have any idea like what kind of dog she is?" And they were like, "No." I was like,
Where'd
"Oh,
you
great."
where'd you get her from? Was it like a rescue or
Yeah. Yeah, I
Oh,
got
I
her
love-
from like a little pet adoption place where they rescue animals. I think they found her in like Alabama or something and then they brought her here, I guess. And yeah, I went there and I was like cuz I've been looking for a dog cuz my dog passed away like a couple months before that and I was like I have to have a dog. Like I can't not have a dog. But my dog before that was a Shih Tzu. So he's like a tiny little, you know, like not barely a dog. Like he was more like a cat. And so then I get Dolly and yeah, I asked them, well first I asked them what kind of dog she was and they were like, we don't know. And I was like, do you know how big she's going to get? And they were like, I don't know, maybe like 50 pounds or something like that. And I was like, okay, I can handle that. And but she was so cute, so I was like, I have to get her, you know. She
I love
just like
that.
looked like my dog's soulmate. So it's like I was like, I have to get her. And she's 2 now. So yeah, she's still a baby, but she's you know,
a
I'm
big
used
baby?
to her now.
A big baby.
Yeah. Yeah, but it was funny. But now she's like 60 pounds. So I'm like a little bigger than we thought, but it's just she's not like huge. She just has really long legs, like
Oh.
freakishly long legs. It's so weird. She's built
Yeah.
very strange.
So my beagle, well, she's not a full beagle because we rescued her. When she was growing, she's actually gonna be a year in 6 days,
Aw.
8 days, or 7 days. Her birthday's the 9th. when she was growing, she just got long. Like, literally, like, not tall, not like just long. And so I'm like, maybe she's mixed with a dachshund, like, or not
Yeah.
a corgi, but I think it's a dachshund. But it's so weird. Like, she's longer than my Aussie, who's like double the weight of her. And
Oh,
it's,
wow.
yeah, it's so weird. We call her Weenie sometimes. Weenie, Weenie. But yeah, like she just kept getting longer and it was so weird. I was like, are you
That's
ever gonna like
funny.
get bigger?
Right. Yeah. I thought Dolly was gonna get bigger. Like I thought she was gonna be like really muscular. And she is, but like she's not like a big pit bull like type build. Like she's more built like a Doberman, but she's also like smaller than a normal Doberman. So I don't know, but then she has like I said, she has like these long legs and she has huge paws. Like when I first got her, people were like, "Oh, she's gonna be like over 100 pounds. Like she's gonna be gigantic." And I was like, "You think so?" I was like, "Oh God."
That's
But
definitely the
no, we're
Dobie
good.
though, the
Yeah,
tallness.
she's the best. She's so much personality, lots of personality, which sometimes can be a lot, but I wouldn't trade her for any other dog. She's literally the perfect dog, like for me. Maybe
Your
not for
soulmate,
everybody,
dog
but for
soulmate.
me. Yeah, dogs are the best. Yeah, like you said, we could talk about dogs forever. But before we go, I did want to ask you. Obviously, you've got your grappling match coming up, and then if there's anything else that you want to promote or anything else coming up, the floor is yours. So let us know all the deets on your grappling match.
Well, I did want to have a fight already like done by now in the year or at least booked. But I guess God had other plans for me, which is all right because I'm just like trusting the process. And I was like, since I'm getting like declined in MMA fights, I might as well take this 10-minute submission only super fight. It'll actually be my first. Um, my husband's on the card as well. He's a purple belt.
Oh, that's
We
awesome.
Yeah, we both have really good opponents. Mine is actually a title fight. I didn't even know that until after I accepted it, but I was like, cool, this is actually my first title fight. So I'm looking
That's
forward to
awesome.
it. And then I'm just going to use the rest of this camp. It's on April 20th. So until the 20th, I've just been focusing on excelling my jujitsu game, like pure jujitsu, not even like MMA jujitsu, because that's what I'm used to, but
Right.
like guard passing and, all of that, like even me pulling guard, I'm not going to, but like, like if I had to in a jujitsu tournament, just like learning
Yeah.
stuff like that. So I'm looking forward to it. And
That's
then
exciting.
hopefully I'll have a fight soon.
Yeah, hopefully. Well, that's kind of cool. I feel like sometimes it's good to take a step back and focus on one thing for a little while and gives you a whole different perspective on it. And then when you get back into fighting in MMA, then you'll have a whole new skill set, to bring into your fights. So that's really cool.
Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I'm super excited to continue just watching your career. Like I said, I knew Corey, but I didn't know who you were, and I'm really glad you reached out to me because I really, really like talking to you and just super excited for what you're doing. I think that's awesome that your goal is to go to the UFC and that you and your husband are both fighters. That's really cool. So, awesome. All good stuff. We'll have to catch up again. And if you get a fight announced, please let me know. Or, I don't know. Maybe one day you'll be able to fight down here. Maybe one of our fighters will fight up there. I don't know. Things are crazy in the Midwest. So
Yeah, I love traveling for fights, so I'm down to come to you. That'd be awesome.
that'd
But
be
yeah,
sick.
it was great talking to you and like getting to know you more. I know we could talk about dogs and MMA so like forever. So I appreciate you having me. This was my first podcast.
Oh,
And
you
thank
did
you for the
great.
experience.
You're a natural.
Oh, thank you.
Awesome. Well, I'll let you get back to your day and back to your dogs. But like I said, really enjoyed talking to you. And yeah, keep me posted on everything. I'm excited for you.
Thank you so much. I look forward to talking to you again.